All right, can people hear me? Perfect. So, welcome to United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey here in Jenny Jump State Park in Hope, New Jersey. Once again, we are on site, finally having some beautiful clear skies tonight. So, while I see a few people kind of wandering down from the rock uh, to take their seats before for the talk tonight, I want to thank you all and go over a few things. So, first of all, do check out our website, uacnj.org. It's where you're going to find a list of all our upcoming talks, as well as a list of all our member clubs, because one of the best ways to get involved in the hobby of astronomy is to actually find your closest local club. And we do like to shout them out just because the tips we have for you here for viewing up here might not work where you are. For example, if you are in New York City or in a city, basically on that side of the line, guys. Yep, right in there. Perfect. All right. In addition, you can check us out on our social media pages, our Facebook, our Instagram, our Discord channel. All excellent ways to get in contact with us and see what presentations or other fun events we might have going on that week. You can also, like I said, in the Discord channel, ask any questions, share your telescope setups, or even share your astrophotography photos. Next thing, so for the people here, if you need to use the bathroom tonight, that would be the porta potty in the back to my left, your right. And we also have a little museum and gift shop area that I will be manning after the presentation. Unfortunately, because as of right now, they still have yet to give me the ability to be in two places at once. Once they do that and give me control over the weather machine, many problems shall be solved. But until then, after the presentation, when he goes through his presentation, we will be having a question and answer session. So anyone here, if you have any questions, especially if they get technical in nature, let's save those to the end, just so we can go through the presentation, and we will get those answered. For those of us joining online, you can just type those in chat because I am paying attention in chat. That's right, we are live streaming this to YouTube and our Twitch channel. So do hit those like and subscribe. For those of you here, you don't need to hit the like and subscribe right now, but you might want to check it out because we also save all our past broadcasts there. Now, since I've made up some time while he was resetting up his telescope, tonight's presentation is, I forget the title. An Introduction to Astrophotography. See, I forget stuff all the time. No worries. And our speaker tonight is Jamie Rodriguez. Jamie is a proud retired U.S. Army paratrooper with combat service in Afghanistan and 2 overseas tours in Germany and 1 overseas tour in Hawaii. Currently, Jamie is employed by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, from which he is retiring at the end of the summer. Jamie, all the cheers of celebration. Jamie processes disability compensation applications for his fellow disabled veterans, and in his spare time, when he's not doing that, he took up astrophotography just over a year ago and is now one of our team leaders here at the Jenny Jump Observatory. With that, here's Jamie.
Mic check, mic check. Okay. Well, thank you for being here. As she said, my name is Jamie, and I've been in to astrophotography for just about a year now, just actually a little bit over a year. So tonight I'll be doing a presentation on what is astrophotography. Okay, astrophotography is the use of photography in astronomy. It's the photographing of celestial objects and phenomena. So you may be wondering, how does astrophotography differ from astronomy? In astronomy, you can basically you can look through the eyepiece of the telescope to get like an instant view of what you're seeing up in the sky. But note that it's not a live view because the light from the objects that we're looking at in the sky takes time to reach us here on Earth. So here's a few fun facts. Did you know that the light from the sun, it takes 8 minutes to reach us here on Earth? So when you're looking at the sun, which by the way is a star, how many people knew that the sun is a star? Okay. So yeah, when you're looking at the sun, you're looking at it as it appeared eight minutes ago. When you're looking at our nearest star, well, beside the sun, Proxima Centauri, you're seeing it as it was 4 years ago. And our nearest galaxy, which is the Andromeda galaxy, that light takes 2.5 million years to reach us. More fun facts. If we had a spaceship that could travel at the speed of light, which is 198,000 miles per second, it would take 200,000 years just to cross the Milky Way galaxy. Be quiet then. All right, so how does astrophotography differ from visual astronomy? Continued. Astrophotography is done using long exposure photography. Long exposure photography is the name given to the technique in which the camera's sensor or shutter is left open for a lengthy period of time. And what is a one-shot color camera? A one-shot color camera is a camera that captures a complete red, green, and blue image every time you take a picture. A DSLR is a perfect example of a one-shot color camera, which, by the way, you can use to do astrophotography. But in the hobby of astrophotography, we have what are called dedicated astrophotography cameras. And these cameras are cool. So here's a few examples here. Again, as I said, DSLR is a great option for the budding astrophotographer. Another option, when you're ready, is a dedicated astrophotography one-shot color camera, also known as OSC. We just refer to them as OSC. The cameras, these cameras are designed specifically for astrophotography. And one of the main advantages of the dedicated astrophotography camera is the ability to cool the sensor and the electronics down, which results in a really a better image. In fact, you can cool these sensors down to minus 35 degrees of the ambient temperature. So let's say if it was 10 degrees here right now, I can cool the camera down to minus 25. And that results, again, in really good pictures. Okay, another type of dedicated astrophotography camera is known as the monochrome. The opposite of the one-shot color camera. The monochrome, it takes a little more work up front because you have to shoot through filters. Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like red filters, blue filters, or sulfur filters, oxygen filters, hydrogen alpha filters. But it requires more work up front, but the results are amazing. For me, it's too much work. I stick with the one-shot color camera. Maybe I'm just lazy, but maybe someday I'll visit the monochrome camera. Okay, guide cameras. Guiding in astrophotography, also known as auto guiding, uses a separate camera to correct tracking errors in a telescope's mount during long exposures. Guiding is a must for long exposure astrophotography. So I'm going to point to you, this here, back here, this is a guide camera, and this is a guide scope. Now, if you're shooting, let's say you're just starting off and you're using a DSLR, and you're doing short exposures like 10 to 20 seconds, you can get by without a guide camera, without guiding. But once you start getting beyond that, you really need to guide. If not, you're going to start getting either elongated stars or egg-shaped stars, as you can. I don't know if you guys can make it out. It's still a little daylight here, but these are what elongated stars look like, and that's not what you want. And these are egg-shaped stars. You don't want that. What you want is perfectly round stars when you're imaging. All right, so why do we need long exposures? In astrophotography, we need long exposures because there is so little light in the night sky. The objects that we're trying to image are very faint and often far, far away. The benefit of this is that with long exposures, the camera's sensor can gain far greater detail than even the human eye. This is why many astrophotography images often seem to capture more stars than you've ever seen with your naked eye, as in the following example of the Pac-Man Nebula. So there's the Pac-Man Nebula. You see how many stars are there. They call this the Pac-Man Nebula because supposedly it resembles a Pac-Man. Um, However, there are software tools out there that can be used to reduce or even eliminate the amount of stars in your image. And here's an example of one before star reduction and one after star reduction. This is called the Heart Nebula. Anybody have a preference which one they like most? Okay. I like the star reduction better one. I think it looks better. Okay, the composition of an astrophotography image. Um, Astrophotography images have 4 layers. The first layer is the actual light coming from whatever object you're imaging, right? When we finish doing that, we capture what are called calibration frames. And these are called dark frames, bias frames, and flat frames. And the way we do that, for the dark frames, basically, we just put the lens cap back on the telescope, and we make sure that we have our settings set to shoot at the same exposure length that we did for our light images, and at the same temperature. So ideally, you want to do your darks while you're still out in the field, and it's the same temperature, because those are very temperature and exposure duration dependent. And then the bias frames, those are really fast. They're done the same way with the lens cap on, and those are super fast. They're like 0.01 seconds. And you take a bunch of those, and finally, the flat frames. Basically, you take the lens cap back off, and it sounds weird, but you put like a white T-shirt on there, and then you shine a bright light into there, and you capture a bunch of those. Now, once you finish all of that, when you get home, you stack all of these frames. There's programs out there like Deep Sky Stacker. You stack all of these frames, and what you get is it outputs a file that you're going to use to actually begin to process your image. For example, here's a shot of the Orion Nebula that I shot right here. Okay, that was shot right here. Can you guys see that? It's still too bright, but one thing I noticed about this, remember I was talking to you guys about guiding, how important guiding is? You'll get elongated stars or egg-shaped stars if you're not guiding good. When I look at this result, when I was processing this, it wasn't that good. My guiding wasn't that good. Either I got some wind or something went off. I wish it was darker so that you guys can really see that. All right, so getting started in astrophotography. So an astrophotography setup, also referred to as a rig, or more commonly referred to as a rig, has 3 main components, and they are obviously the tripod. This is called a mount. We call it a mount because this is where you mount your telescope, and then this is a telescope. So that's the main setup for an astrophotography rig. Okay, so as when we talk about telescopes, mounts, and tripod, I'll start with the telescopes first. Even though they have shorter focal lengths, so with shorter focal lengths and faster focal ratios, digital cameras are a good choice for capturing wide field images covering a large portion of the sky. Moving up a little bit, we get to the telescopes with mid-range focal lengths and focal ratios. These are also a really good choice for capturing stunning wide field images. The only thing is more magnification. And finally, when you start getting up to your really large telescopes, the upside is that you get more magnification. The downside is that the focal ratio, that's the speed at which it captures light, it's slower. So you're definitely going to need longer exposures, and you're definitely going to need to guide. But it's cool because you can get, this is really good for like planetary imaging, lunar imaging, and for those really faint deep sky objects, you want to try to get as much magnification as you can. Okay, next I'll talk about mounts. Again, this part right here is called a mount. Why do we call it a mount, Dan? There you go. All right. The mount is a part of an astronomy setup onto which you mount your telescope or DSLR. One of the most important characteristics to consider when choosing a mount is the payload capacity. Obviously, the higher payload capacity that it has, the bigger the telescope you can put on it, and the more gear you can put on it. So as mounts go, kind of entry level, it would be your altitude azimuth, also known as alt-az. These are like entry level mounts. You see, can you guys see the picture? Yeah, this is like with a simple DSLR setup right there. And then we go on to mounts that can handle a little bit more payload capacity. These are called equatorial mounts, or also known as German equatorial mounts, or simply EQ mounts. And now the latest and greatest in mounts is this type here. This is called the harmonic drive or strain wave gear mount. And these have far better, I mean, they can handle, the payload capacity on this thing is 44 pounds, which looks tiny for that. But it uses the same technology. Have you guys ever seen like a video of these car factories where you see all the robots building the cars? Those robots use the same thing, harmonic drive and strain wave gears. Yeah. So it has a lot of torque. It has a lot of torque, and they're more precise as well. Okay, the alt azimuth mounts. Kim, am I still on? Did I? Radio check, radio check. Okay. All right. So some of the advantages of the alt az mounts are easy use, portability, compatibility, and they're easy to set up, and they're not very expensive. Then we go on to the equatorial mounts, again, also known as the EQ mounts or the German equatorials. Unlike the alt-az mount, EQ mounts are ideal for deep sky imaging or prolonged astronomical observing because they can follow astronomical objects as the Earth rotates. Once you're polar aligned, and we'll talk about polar alignment a little bit down the road here. Once you're polar aligned, equatorial mounts are able to keep a specific target in your field of view without it drifting away. This is because the mount has one axis that is driven at a constant speed parallel to the Earth's axis of rotation to compensate for the Earth's rotation. This arrangement is also called sidereal drive or clock drive. And now, yeah, we talked a little bit about the harmonic drive mounts. Again, I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but there's lots of advantages to these. Obviously, they're pricier because it's like the latest, greatest stuff. But they're more precise. They have higher torque. They can hide or carry a heavier payload. Like this bottom one here, this is called a Pegasus Astro Nix 101, and it can handle up to 66 pounds, and it's maybe just a little bit bigger than that. So, and if you guys remember from the previous slides, this is the equatorial mount. You see how big this thing is compared to this mount? The equatorial mounts, they're much bigger. Okay, and then another piece of the puzzle obviously is your tripod. It's important to have a very stable tripod when you're imaging, when you're setting up for a night of imaging, even if you're doing observing. It's good to have a sturdy tripod. If you're starting up with a DSLR, something like the one on your left would be perfect. You know, just starting off with a digital camera. Now a lot of the companies, they're doing these carbon fiber tripods. They're lighter, so it makes for a more portable rig. But if I had a bigger telescope on that, I would definitely want this third one over here. This thing weighs like 20 pounds. It's really beefy, and it's going to hold your whole rig down nice and sturdy. And a lot of times people will even add sandbags to the bottom to weight it down even more. All right, so I'm going to talk now about the steps involved in conducting an imaging session. So the first and most important thing, when you have to level your tripod, and it has to be facing north, right? But you take out one of these spirit levels, and you put it on your tripod, and you make sure that you're perfectly level. That's really, really important. If not, you're going to have a bad night. Trust me, I know this. And then once you got everything all plugged up and you know all connected and plugged in, and you got your power on and everything, What you want to do first, you want to get like what's called like a rough focus, or you won't be able to do the next step, which is polar alignment. Yeah, so next we'll go into polar alignment, which we're going to talk about. And then you're going to slew your mount. When I say slew, that just means pan and tilt your mount. In fact, I'll show you. Excuse me. So when I say we're going to slew to this target or slew to that target, all we're talking about is panning and tilting the mount. And actually, it's a telescope. It's a telescope that's moving. So I'll give you an example. If I was moving to a certain target, you would see the telescope move and pan in different ways. Now the good things with these computerized mounts, which are called go-to mounts, there's like a database with all these different, like thousands of objects that are in the sky, right? And once you're polar aligned, you punch in like whatever the catalog number is for that particular object, and the mount will go there. So you don't have to go left arrow, right arrow, up and down. But for now, I'll just send it back home. Okay. And by the way, I'm running this on an iPhone. You can use a tablet. You can use an iPhone. You can use, well, I'm not sure if you can use the ASI Air with a laptop. I heard there's people doing it. I don't know. But basically, all of this is being run by this mini PC right here. Everything is running from this little mini PC. You see it has Wi-Fi, so you don't need to be connected a hard line like an Ethernet line or whatever. This is all Wi-Fi, and it's running everything. It's running the mount. It's running the guide camera, the main camera, the focuser. Everything is running from this little PC right here. And the images that you capture, some of these have like a micro SD card. Like this one has a micro SD card. Usually I have like a little thumb drive that I plug into one of the USB ports, and it's a lot faster. When I get home, I just unplug it, put it into my computer, and download all the data. Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's something called Sky Atlas. There's another one called Sky Portal. There's a ton of free apps out there. They're totally free, where you just look them. I mean, you can start looking up objects in the night sky. Yeah. All right. So now we're talking about focus. Beside having a perfectly level tripod facing north, right? Um, Getting focus early on, it's going to make for a easier night. Um, And there's a number of ways to do this. You can use this doing the focus using the focus knobs on your telescope. And most telescopes, if you guys can see here in this picture, have like the bigger knob is called a like for coarse focus. And then if you unscrew that little part there, inside there's another knob for getting fine focus. But it's important to get fine focus. And when I'm talking about fine focus, that means that your stars are perfectly round. That's what you want. You don't want to see donuts. You don't want to see them stretched out. You want to see perfectly round stars. Another way to start doing your focus is by using something called the Batonov mask. And this was invented by a Russian amateur astronomer called Pavel Batonov. And what it does, yeah, it's kind of there. I don't know if you guys can see it. Um, it works by diffracting incoming light into a predictable and recognizable pattern, which you can then use to guide to perfect focus. So basically, if you guys can see, it causes what's called diffraction spikes. And if they're either off to the left or right, you're not focused. What you're looking is to get like a perfect cross just like that, and that means you got perfect focus. And then you can just take off your Batonov mask. A lot of the telescopes these days, they come with a Batonov mask. It's right in here. I would just unscrew this part and then put the Batonov mask on the front of the computer, I mean, in front of the telescope, and start using that to get my focus. And Paul just bought a sample of a Batonov mask. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, yeah, a lot of people are doing that these days. And then another way, or third way of getting focus, if you're lazy like me, it's something called an autofocuser. And I'll show you what part that is over here. That's this part here. So I imagine that long before I got into this hobby, if you needed to focus your telescope and it's cold out there, like 10 degrees, you got to bundle up and go back outside and mess with the knobs and get focus back. These days, I just sit in there with my tablet. I stay inside when it's nice and warm with my tablet or my cell phone, and remotely, I can rotate the focus knobs through this little tool, this little device right here. So I can get focus using this device instead of having to come out in the cold and refocus my telescope. So I love the automatic electronic focuser. Maybe it's because I'm lazy. I think it's a really good tool. In fact, you could have it set up within the program that is running off this little mini computer. You could have it set up to automatically rerun the autofocus like every hour or so. So that's focus. Now we'll talk about polar alignment. Polar alignment is really, really important. Remember I talked about when you first set up your tripod, where do you want it pointing? You want it pointing right at the North Star, right? And it's also important to note that you got to make sure that your elevation is set correctly. Like here where we are, we're like at almost 41 degrees of latitude. So if you were in a different place, like maybe in the southern hemisphere, it would be different. But here we're at about 40 degrees. So when you're going to start polar aligning, make sure that you have your mount, cranked up to that angle, to that degree. And that's just done by loosening a couple of things here and just moving some knobs around. So okay, so we want to get pointed up at the North Star, right? And then to find the North Star, it's really easy. If you can make out the Big Dipper in the night sky, there's a star that's called, I call it Dubby. Some people pronounce it differently, Doobie. But Doobie, as you guys can see here, it points, the bottom star of Doobie points right at Polaris. And if you look at the Little Dipper, the beginning of the handle of the Little Dipper, that's Polaris. So that's how you find it in the night sky. And if we could have 365 clear nights, every night when you come out, the North Star is always going to be in the same place. It's always going to be there. Now, the Little Dipper may move around it as the year goes on, but the North Star is always going to be right there. So it's easy to find the North Star, which is really important for this hobby. All right, so within the app that's on this mini PC, we use a little polar alignment tool, and it'll start giving you prompts like, move a few degrees that way, move a few degrees that way, and it'll do something called plate solving. And plate solving is just comparing its database to what it's looking at the sky so that it knows exactly what it's looking at. And after it plate solves, it'll tell you to move a few other times, and then eventually you'll get here. And what you're trying to get here, you're trying to get this blue circle within that green circle, right? And you're also looking to get what's called your total error. If you could get it to 0 all the way, that's great. If not, if you're within 1 arc minute, a few arc seconds, that's fine too. But it'll let you know when you're polar line because you'll get a smiley face. The smiley face will say, hey, you did it. In fact, once you click finish, some fireworks go up too. So that's polar alignment. It's really, really important. All right, final steps. Once you're about to, you're getting ready to start your imaging session now. So you're going to slew your telescope to your target that you chose from your database. Or actually, most of us, before we come out here, we know ahead of time what we plan to image that night. It all depends, what time of the year it is. Because there are some objects that you can see in the summer, but you can't see in the winter, and vice versa. So we're going to double check our focus. We know we ran the rough focus, then we got a little more focus after we did polar alignment. But now it's time to really lock in our focus, make sure we're dialed in. And then we're going to turn on our guiding. Remember, we talked about guiding because if we're doing, most of us here that are doing astrophotography, we're doing long exposures. And again, you can get by without auto guiding if you're doing short exposures when you're just first starting off with a DSLR. But once you start getting up into doing like really long exposures, you're definitely going to need to guide. So then there's a tool in here, and it's not just this little mini PC that has astrophotography programs. There's other ones out there. There's one called Nina. There's something called SharpCap. I think there's another one called ASCAP, is it? I forget the name of it. Anyway, there's a number of programs, but basically, one of the really cool things within these programs is something called like a sequencer, where basically you tell it, okay, this is the target I'm shooting tonight. I want you to shoot like 100 exposures at 4 minutes each, right? And then once you hit start, it's going to slew to that target, and it's going to start your imaging. At that point, you come inside, sit down. Sometimes I'll go inside. There's a bunk room in there for the members. I'll go and take a 2-hour nap, come back outside, check, make everything's fine, and then I'll just go back to sleep. Because it's all running automated. Now the only thing that could mess that up sometimes, if you're if we get like even a slight gust of wind, you end up getting some bad frames because you'll get. Well, remember we talked about the elongated stars or the X-shaped stars, and those are bad for your final result. Another thing that really annoys us is satellite trails. They actually appear in our images. We'll get satellite trails. We'll get airplane trails. And it's okay if you're doing like 30-second exposures or maybe even 90-second. But when you're doing 5-minute exposures and you get like a satellite trail, that's 5 minutes down the drain because you can't use that frame. So that's frustrating. Yes, please.
Yeah, so satellites usually go through the frame pretty quickly because you're usually seeing low Earth orbit satellites. But there's one night I had a satellite in my frame for I want to say half an hour, and I eventually tracked it down and realized why it was in there so long. It was a GPS satellite, so those are way high up and they have hang time because you want them to be visible for a long period of time. And thankfully, it was not the object. It didn't obscure the object, but if I had been at imaging something bigger, it would have ruined like a ton of my data. We really do.
Oh, he mentioned Elon Musk. Any of you guys familiar with the Starlink satellites that he has up there? Has anyone ever seen a satellite train go over? Yeah, it's amazing. I saw one here too. It was amazing. You just look up, and at first I thought it was like another Hale Bob or something. Something about you guys remember one? Is that the one that went into Jupiter? Was it? Yeah, yeah. So that's what I thought it was at first, and then I think it was Dan. He said, "No, that's a Starlink satellite train." Okay, so now we started imaging. Okay, so we're at the last screen, and I actually compiled a little video montage of some of the objects that I've actually captured out here. So we'll play the video, then after that we'll do like a Q&A session. All right. Oh, audio. She's got to turn on the sound. Now, some of this is not my best work. It's from when I first got into the hobby, and some of it is as I progressed through the hobby. And you never stop learning in this hobby. Um, nah, you know what? Let's exit out of this mode. And how do I get down to the bottom? I gotta get down to the bottom slide. Oh, wait a minute. It should be here. I know it's here. Oh, there it is. You saw the play. I just saw the play one. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get to it. Okay. Yeah, it's playing. You just need sound. Stand by for technical difficulties. Yes, they are. They are. And they have almost no backlash. Backlash is like when your mount slews to a target or so, Sometimes there's some slack left in there, which you don't want. But with the harmonic drive mounts, it's just like no backlash. They're very precise. Crank it up a little. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk more about the harmonic drives. I don't know if you guys can see that. Oh no, wait. Is there a way to go full screen there? Yep. Yeah, it's not gonna play in the full screen mode for some reason. Sorry about that. I have to exit full screen. It'll play in this mode though. That's what's happening here today. That's our nearest neighbor. Well, our nearest neighbor in galaxy, Andromeda. I put Greek mythology info on the top of these screens, but unfortunately, it's you guys are sitting kind of far. It's not the right color. But maybe I can read some of it to you guys. This is Orion, the Orion Nebula. He's the son of Poseidon, and he was supposedly a great hunter, a skilled hunter. Horsehead Nebula, there's really no Greek mythology about that. If you look in the middle, you could, well, it's gone now, but it has the shape of a horse's head. That's why they call it the horse head. This is the Heart Nebula that we looked at earlier. This one, if you look closely, you'll see the shape of a pelican. So it's called the Pelican Nebula. Here's the eye, there's the beak. This is called the witch head. If you look closely, it looks like there's a witch's head. And she's mesmerized by this star here. I forget the name of the star, but that's called the Witch Head Nebula. This is the Witch's Broom, also known as the Veil Nebula. The top part looks like the shape of a witch's broom. And this was overcolorized. This is when I first got into the hobby. This is called the Solder region, and I believe it's a part of the in Sagittarius. In Cygnus, yeah. Okay, we looked at the Pac-Man Nebula before. This is called an emission nebula. As nebulas go, you have emission nebula, which means they're emitting their own light. Then you have reflection nebula, which they're reflecting the light of an object nearby. It could be a star, it could be something else. This is the bubble nebula. It's hard to see from where you guys are, but it looks just like bubble. The Eagle Nebula, have you guys ever heard of something called the Pillars of Creation? That's where they are. They're in a nebula called the Eagle Nebula. And this shot I got, it's a wide field shot. I got like 3 targets. I got the Lagoon Nebula, the Trifid Nebula, and something called Webb's Cross, which is like a star cluster. And that was using a white, something with a lower F ratio and focal length. This is a Pinwheel Galaxy. It's 20.87 million light years away. That's one of my furthest targets to date. Stephan's Quintet is actually my furthest target, 290 million light years. It's a galaxy cluster, but it's hard to see. And here's some more. Actually, I think in the PowerPoint we talked a little bit about that. When we talked about the distance, the amount of time that it takes some of these objects in the skies to reach us. So thank you for watching, And at this point, we'll start doing the Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Jamie, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
So, because a number of you did not get a safety briefing because you snuck in during the presentation, that's right, the safety briefing is unescapable. If you need to use the restroom, that is the porta potty in the back to the left. It is illuminated by red, so when it gets darker, you'll be able to find it. We also have a little museum and gift shop area that I will be manning after the presentation. When we go to leave, do use your headlights. We do not want to get run over. We do not want to do the paperwork about getting run over. I'm sure you also want to avoid the paperwork and hassle of getting run over. So do use the headlights. At the same time, if we are using flashlights to wander around, do keep those pointed towards the ground because we don't need to unnecessarily shine those into people's eyes. We all have had the feeling of, oh no, my retinas, they're gone. Let's avoid that. So, how question and answer session is going to work? For the people here, you're going to raise your hand and kind of wave it about like you just don't care. And then for online chat, you have the easiest job of just typing. Pros and cons. All right, so I'm going to start it off with the first online question of... Yeah, we are. We're on YouTube and Twitch. Why did you go for astronomy or astrophotography as a hobby versus other things like fishing, carpentry, or underwater basket weaving?
That's easy. I've always been fascinated by the stars, by the heavens, and different. Yeah.
You need your mic on, hon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rewind. Okay. Mic check. Mic check.
Yep, it's on. Just put it on your pocket,
Yep.
and I'll adjust so they can hear you. That's good. There.
Okay. You guys can hear me now? So yeah, I've always been fascinated by astronomy and by the heavens, but I think what really got me into it, when I was in the Army, I traveled all over the world, and every night, no matter where I was, whatever part of the world I was in, I could always look up and see certain constellations. So this is becoming annoying. Yeah. And so anyway, that's the answer. That's how I got into it. I've always been wanting to experiment and try it out.
All right, question out here.
Yes.
What location did you take these pictures? Like here? Or
All here.
They were all here?
Yeah, they're all done here. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so our next online question. Did you start your astrophotography journey with a DSLR?
I did. I did not know what I was doing at the time, so honestly, I didn't stick with it. But yeah, I did start with a DSLR, and I would highly recommend that to anybody that's thinking about it, because it's the least expensive way to go, and there's plenty of help out there. I think I got too lazy.
Plus, you can use the DSLR for other things besides astrophotography. Another question out here. I got one over there.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for doing the talk tonight.
Thanks, Paul.
How disappointed are you that you're giving a talk and your telescope set up here as opposed to over there with the rest of us?
I haven't checked the weather yet, but if it's going to be clear, I can just get Al to help me carry it over. And also, I'm sorry, going back to the gentleman right here, your question about where did I shoot all this stuff. Location. There's something called the Bortle scale, and it's the amount of light pollution of where you are. So the higher the number, like if you live in a Bortle 10, that means like you're in New York City, like a really big city, it's really bright. If you're in a Bortle 1, you're like maybe out there in New Mexico somewhere, Arizona, out in the desert, right? So this here, Jenny Jump happens to be a Bortle 4. Where I live, it's a Bortle 5. So I look for you look for the darkest skies possible when you're in this hobby. So that's why all of my stuff was done right here, because this is the darkest skies that I can find.
All right. So our next online question can, and I think this has to do with reusing equipment you already have. Can you use a camera you were using for images as your guide camera, or are those special hardware you need? So, like, you have this camera here on your guide scope. Was that originally the camera you were using to take images, or and you just, oh, that's now my guide camera, or is this like a special camera that you need?
I've never not done it this way. I've always had like my, my main camera for imaging, and then a separate guide camera for guiding. So I've never done it any other way.
All right. Question out here. Perfect.
How long is the exposure time longer for the things that you took that are further away? Like how do the exposure times that you use differ? Like how does that affect what you're capturing, and is it a distance thing?
It can be, yeah. For those really distant and really faint objects, first of all, I think you should try to go with higher magnification, so like maybe a larger scope, and you're definitely gonna need the longer exposures because you want to get as much as that light as you can. Because remember, we talked about with those bigger scopes with the they have higher focal length, which means more magnification, but the focal ratio, which is the speed at which they gather light, is very slow. So on this guy, for example, I could probably get by with 90-second exposures and get the same amount of data. Yeah, but with the big guys, you're definitely gonna need longer exposures, and which means that you're definitely gonna need to be guiding, right? And you're gonna have your fingers crossed that the wind or the satellite trails don't mess up your frames.
All right. So our next online question: what is your favorite place for astrophotography?
Right now, Jenny, jump.
Yeah, I didn't know if you attended any of the star parties out in like Cherry Springs or North South
We
Lake.
were supposed to go to Cherry Springs. We were actually reserved. The three amigos here, myself, Al, and Dan. We call ourselves the three amigos. We had reservations and everything, but then we just kept looking at the weather, and it was going to be like cloudy 3 days in a row. So there was no point in driving like 4 hours and being in a tent for 3 days in the rain. Yeah, so we didn't go.
All right, and another question from.
Are you familiar with the Sea Star S50 or P50, whatever it is?
I've heard of it. Is that a Celestron?
No, it's an automatic.
Oh yeah. I've heard of it, but I've
Hold on.
Yeah, it's basically a very cheap, $500 device. You don't have to do all this hookup. All you need to do is level it, and then from a smartphone app, you can just go to a target and say, start capturing images.
Oh, is that one of like
You can go to a website called cloudynights.com if you want to buy a used cheaper one, or you can go to the ZWO website and buy it from there.
As for people who have them, I think one of our member clubs, LVAAS, has one in their loaner program, but I think it's been continuously out on loan since they got it. So if we have any of the members from that member club, they would be an excellent person to ask about that.
with the Sea
Oh,
Star?
I was just informed that Tom from one of our member clubs is currently setting one up out in the yard. So you will get to pick his brain about the Sea Star.
Yeah, and with the Sea Star, is that like one of these mini smart? Okay, I know. So I had one. There's another one out there called the Dwarf 2. It's the same deal as the Sea Star. Yeah, it's like maybe about this big. And it's like
It kind of looks like if you're familiar with video games, the video game Portal, the turret, where it's like, "Are you still there?" And will get you with the laser and then shoots you dead. It's kind of like that, where you have the body and then one of its arms is just the camera.
Yeah, I had one and I sold it. Yeah, they're like ultra portable though.
So I think that I think the Sea Star is a good beginner option, but I think it's kind of in this very weird niche where it's good enough to do what we call EAA, electronically aided astronomy. So you can take pictures and you can have sort of a live view of the object, but the quality of the images is not what I would term Instagram worthy necessarily. And the limitation that the Sea Star has is that it's relying on an Altaz mount, so that limits how long of an exposure it can do to roughly 30 seconds because it doesn't have what he's talking about here with an equatorial or harmonic drive where you can have only one motor turning. That said, I think there's a really strong niche for it. I think a lot of people, I've never met anybody who had one that didn't love it. But it's not necessarily it can be your first and last astrophotography gear, or it can be a gateway drug that you then inevitably upgrade from and wind up reselling.
All right. So our next question, and just for the people in chat, because I noticed there were more questions coming in, I will get you the questions that you are answering now. I just go in order of how they appeared in chat. So don't worry, we will get to those questions. The next online question is, can I use a mirrorless camera for astrophotography like a Sony that they have?
That I do not know. I didn't go very far with DSLRs, and I'm just not that far advanced into the hobby yet. So I don't want to give you some bad information.
You could use mirrorless, just like there are different scopes that are better at things than others. Like there are certain scopes that are great for viewing planets, but really are not ideal if you're viewing nebula. Cameras, there have been people taking images of the sky since forever. It really depends on what you want to image as to whether you're going to be happy with that camera. Sound about right, guys? All right, another question out here. All right, so our next online question. Did you purposely get a color coordinated setup? And can you get other colors of equipment?
That's something you hear a lot in the hobby. This shade of red happens to be a very popular color, and it's not just this particular manufacturer. This is a company called ZWO. They're out of China, and right now it's like everybody's going red. But there's blue, there's gray, there's other. In fact, I have a blue one, a different mount. It's the Pegasus Astro mount, but I don't know if I purposely color coordinated it, but I love the way it looks.
Yeah, there's probably someone out there going, I went purple with pink hardware.
I've seen purple.
And I'm like, that probably costs a little bit more for custom colors. All right. Our next online question is, and I think this is more of a snarky comment, isn't a spirit level what they had during high school spirit assemblies, where it's like, woo, go high school football team?
Hardy ha ha.
Hey, you were afraid that we were going to really get you on all those tough questions. So had to
That was an easy one.
had to lobby a nice one. Any questions out here?
Okay. Red thing on the back of your telescope is the camera,
Yes.
and that's sending an image to your cell phone
Yeah,
that
but
you can see,
yes,
and
but
then it
there's-
sends it to the computer to get exposed.
yeah, it goes. No, the exposure happens here in the camera, right?
Okay.
And then through the Wi-Fi on my phone or on my tablet, I can see it as it's developing. But remember, it's not live because these objects are so far away. But as I start getting more and more of these 5-minute exposures, I can start to see what it is that I'm imaging
Okay, on your cell phone.
on my cell phone or my tablet. Yeah,
And then it's stored in your computer, and then you load it into your main computer when you get home.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So our next online question, also a nice easy one. Are you running that off a battery bank or a wall outlet?
Portable power tank. Yeah, portable power supply. It's called the EcoFlow River, and it can run for up to 99 hours.
I was trying to figure that out in days.
Yeah.
But once I got past 4, I'm like, I no longer remember that number. All right, so was there another question out here? Oh, lots of one.
We were talking about the battery. So how many amps are drawn by all these different pieces of equipment? Camera, EAF, your Wi-Fi.
It's mostly 12 volt.
your mount.
Most of it is 12 volt.
Yeah, I know. 12 volts. So how many amps is it drawing? Does
You're,
that
speak,
determine the battery
you're
life?
speaking a foreign language, man.
Okay.
I don't want to give you some bad info. Sorry.
I feel like my rig will usually top out at something like 5 to 10 watts that it pulls. So I mean, I have a 750 watt-hour battery. That one's probably that's like a 500.
No, the same thing. 750.
Oh, that's a 750. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So it sips battery. Like it does, and you could run it off of a wall outlet if you wanted to. And I mean, we have electricity here, so we could do it. But we like the flexibility with these portable power stations to just be able to plop it down anywhere, and including while camping.
And when I say 99 hours, I've never ran it 99 hours, but I know that I can run it 3 nights in a row, imaging for like up to 6 hours, and I still have juice in there. Yeah, but I've never gone as far as 99 hours.
All right, so our next online question has to do with the Batinoff mask. Is a Batinoff mask basically purposefully causing the diffraction the James Webb Space Telescope has intrinsically?
I don't know much about the JWST. I'm assuming
It has the hexagonal mirrors, and there's
I know exactly
multiple.
what the JWST is, but I don't know what kind of focusing equipment they have on board. I really don't know. Yeah, I doubt
They're
it.
not using a mask, but I think they're referring to the pattern where it
Yeah.
has that 6 spike starred
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that, or it could be in the post processing.
All right, I saw you also had a question.
For your pictures, do you use filters to eliminate light pollution?
I don't, because here at Jenny Jump, it's, like I said, to Bortle 4, remember we talked about the Bortle scale? Now, if you were imaging closer to the city, then a light pollution filter would come in handy. In fact, I think Al uses light pollution filters, and maybe, I don't know if Dan, if you do. I don't use them out here, so no, I don't really see a need to use them here.
All right, so our next online question. Which is your favorite program and your least favorite program to use?
For capturing, I mean, just in general?
Probably for doing the image capturing and
My
processing.
favorite is the ZWO ASI Air, that mini PC, because it's so intuitive and it's so easy. And in fact, there's one of the things it says on there, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. And once you learn it, it's so easy. My least favorite would have to be something like, Al, don't get mad at me, Nina. There's another program out there called Nina. When I first started in the hobby, where I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to use a program named Nina to do this hobby, and I ended up just giving up on that because I couldn't understand it. But the funny thing is, the reason we're laughing, because right now I'm in the process of revisiting Nina, so I'm getting back into Nina now because I know what I'm doing now, more or less.
It's like Brussels sprouts. You might not like them as a kid, but as an adult, you should probably try them again. And probably not just boiled in water like you had them grown up. They're actually quite good if you roast them with some balsamic. That's a different topic entirely. So, I believe you had a question.
Could you give an estimate of like the total cost?
I don't want to scare anybody away.
It was an online question too of how much is this rig sitting right here?
Okay, before I answer that, let me just say this. Don't start with anything like this. I kind of went overboard when I got into the hobby. I've been known to do that. And there were members of the club that would say, oh, Jamie, slow down, slow down. And I would say, it's okay, I'll grow into it. And I have. But I wouldn't say to start. But if you guys want to know, so this camera is $39.99, $3,999. This telescope is about $2,000, so that's about $6,000 already. Say again. I couldn't hear.
Is that a 4-inch refractor? They're asking about the.
Oh no, it's a refractor. Yeah. Oh no. I can tell you the specs. It's a f 5.7 and it's 300. I think it's yeah. It's a GT81. Yeah, so 81 millimeters.
81 millimeters is the answer.
Yeah. It's called the GT81 Wifty. So then the mount was when it first came out with the tripod. That was another 2,200. The ASI Air was 399 because I got the extra one. The guide camera was 400. So I mean, do the math. So we're about $8,000 already. Yeah.
Really? Because so far I've gotten up to 11,000.
Okay, really? Yeah. You see, I lost track. But again, I would highly discourage anybody from going that this far very fast. Start off with a DSLR or maybe something smaller. Something with a smaller telescope, a smaller mount, and everything. Learn the hobby first, and then get something. As you're ready, save up your money and get something bigger, something nicer. I don't buy used. Yeah, yeah.
So
My dad used to tell me when I was a young man, when you buy used, you're buying somebody else's problem. So when it comes to cars, anything that I buy new. I buy new. Yeah.
also keep in mind you can in fact buy used, but like Jamie said, there's a chance you are inheriting a problem child. Something you should consider when you do start out buying things is whether each thing will work together and how to stone it, where like, okay, I'm getting this camera now and I have this scope, I'm going to get this camera, but that camera will also work with the next scope I upgrade to.
She brings up a good point. ZWO, which I happen to be a huge fan of, once you start buying ZWO equipment, you're kind of roped in because their stuff doesn't play nice with anything else. So other companies out there, there's a company called Prima Lux Lab. They're out of Italy, and what I kind of like about their ecosystem is that they don't care what other company stuff you can connect to. You can connect everything. With ZWO, again, I love ZWO, but you're roped into their cameras, their focusers, their stuff. You're roped in.
Just something to consider. All right. So our next online question: does each program that does the same job, so like I believe you said Nina, the ASI Air, and whatnot, does each program have something it does better than the other programs, or is like there a defining feature that these other programs don't have that Nina has this, but ASI Air has this?
Well, right now I can only speak for ASI Air and Nina. Um, well, ASI Air to me is a fully loaded program. You can do everything you need to do right on that little mini PC, on your app or on your cell phone. Anything that has to do with your whole night of imaging, that little PC runs it all. Um, but you can do that same kind of stuff with Nina with the added bonus of it doesn't have to be only ZWO equipment. With Nina, you can connect, QHY stuff, Celestron stuff. They don't really care.
All right. Was there another question out here? I actually hear the crickets starting now, so at least I get a little bit of feedback. All right. So our next online question. For your photos, were you using a set color palette or just going by what looked good in the program when you're processing?
No, I try to hold true to, what's actually there in the data. I try not to add, anything new into it or pull away something that was always there. As far as coloring, I mean, this may sound corny, but I can't see these objects with my eyes, right? So I don't really know what it looks like. So honestly, when I'm about to process a new target that I just shot, I Google pictures of it, and whatever ones seem to be the most, unanimous, that's kind of what I try to aim for, getting my result to look like one of these results, That's the best way I can answer that.
All right. Just a reminder for people out here, if you have a question, raise your hand up in there and kind of wave it around. I am kind of night blind, just because I stare at a screen. So my vision is based off motion, much like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. So if you are not waving your hand about or put it down, you kind of cease to exist in the dark void. Right, so our next online question is... Oh, we covered how expensive your rig is. Um, I think they missed when you said this. What software do you use for processing? PixInsight or...
Oh, I usually use there's a program called Cyril. It's free, and it's a good way to learn how to start processing your data. And so I pre-process in Cyril, and then I go into PixInsight to refine it because PixInsight has a lot of really great powerful tools. But PixInsight, it's like $250 subscription. It's a lifetime subscription. You only pay once. You get free upgrades for the rest of your life, but it's very pricey.
Hey, at least it's like you pay once and you're good for life versus what certain other graphic arts company decided
I
to do.
say start with Cyril, Siril.
All right. People online, if you have any last minute questions, do get those in because I know I'm coming down to the end of our online questions. I like to tell you because by the time you hear that, we've already moved on through the next question. Another question out here. Oh, I see one all the way in the back. And then I'll get you, sir, in the front. You put your hand down, you cease to exist.
Hey, I had a question. What is the best or most memorable night sky that you have photographed?
Oh, okay. It was definitely out here. And okay, if you look at the lunar calendar, you have the time of the month that's called the full moon, right? That's when it's really bright. But the opposite of that is called the new moon. That's when there's no moon because it's below our horizon. If you can get out here on a night where there's a new moon and it's clear skies, which I have, it actually happened. It was over this past winter. There was a night that everything worked out. I guess all the planets were aligned or whatever. But it was a new moon and it was a clear night. So that's the best time that I ever had. And it was out here. It was like, I think in January.
Right. I think you had the question.
You kind of answered a little bit of it. Do you do your best astrophotography in the winter when the nights are longer versus the summer?
Yes, because well, right now because I still work. In the summer, it doesn't really get dark till what time is it now? It's like 9 o'clock, and we still if Al and Dan and I was setting up our gear to image tonight, we still can't really see Polaris. We would have to wait like another maybe half hour just to start polar lighting. In the winter, it gets dark at 4:30, so I can be out here like at 3:30 setting up, image to maybe 9 o'clock, and go home and get a good night's sleep.
Plus, the winter sky is a little bit calmer. It doesn't have quite as much heat waves going on.
Yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, I do find that the night skies are more crisp and clear during the winter. Yeah.
Was there another question out there that I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss one? Our next online question: if you had to do it all over again, what would you have bought instead or wish you did at first?
I honestly, I think I wish I would have given more effort to trying to learn the whole DSLR thing, instead of going straight, for the big stuff. So yeah, I think I wish I would have maybe spent more time learning the DSLR thing. In fact, I would encourage to all the viewers out there, if you're thinking about getting into this hobby, don't go overboard. Start with something simple. There's plenty of YouTube information out there that'll get you started. And start small. And I tell you one thing though, once you start getting into this hobby, it gets very addictive. It can get very addictive. In fact, I always joke to Dan, whenever we even suspect there's going to be a clear night, I say, I must obey my dark master. I must obey my dark master. And I'm out here. I come.
It also helps if you find a group that shares the same interest and passion because y'all can help each other. There's always going to be someone who just got that latest, greatest gear that man, I wish I could check that out. And you could see what they're doing and then go, oh, I see that problem that I wish I would avoid and go get something completely different. And plus, socialization is fun because you have downtime between image.
Yeah, there's one of the members here, a guy named Mike. I forget pronouncing his last name. I just call him Mike D. When I first came out here, I was, trying to learn Nina, which is another one of these, you know, software programs out there. And I would come out here night after night, week after week, and I struck out. I just kept striking out. I didn't even know how to polar line. So one night, Mike was out here, and he said, "Have you ever heard of the ASI Air? That's the little mini PC that's on there." I said, "I have one of those, but I don't know how to use it." He said, "Well, bring it Wednesday, and we'll go through it." That one night that I spent with Mike changed the whole hobby for me, because in maybe an hour session, he showed me, everything from lining, leveling my tripod, make sure it's pointing off. In fact, I was trying to polar line in my living room. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know you have to point at the North Star, and your tripod has to be level. But that one night that I spent out here with Mike, made it all clear to me. My point behind that is, if you're getting into the hobby and you're having hard time, getting started, reach out. Reach out to us online, or or when you're out here, you have questions. If you have a little setup that you want to have questions about, just ask us.
And this is why we always try and get you involved in your local astronomy club, because then not only will you get your questions answered, but it's the most conveniently drive away. And you had a question?
I know nothing, but why do you have to point at the North Star? I'm a total beginner.
Okay. Well, again, polar alignment is really crucial, because when you set up your tripod and your mount and your telescope is pointing at the North Star, once polar alignment is complete, the telescope, your rig knows where on the planet Earth it is, and it does that using the North Star. Am I making sense, Dan? Is that accurate?
So you want to be polar aligned because it's really not that you're trying to align with the North Star, it's that you're trying to align with the axis of the Earth's rotation, which happens to point directly at the North Star. So what you want, and the reason why these equatorial mounts are so powerful, is that you can use just one of the two motors to rotate in that clock drive fashion in the same speed that the Earth rotates. So that way you keep the same object in the frame without having to move two motors. So you're able to take that long exposure and not get those elongated stars because you're polar aligned. In the southern hemisphere, astrophotographers just have to polar align to the little empty spot in space where the South Pole points to.
Basically, it has to do with whether you'll get pinpoint stars or trails going across your picture. Because if you want pinpoints, you want your camera to follow that area of sky as the Earth rotates through. If you just set up a tripod and your camera is pointing, that's where your camera's pointing, you're going to get a really lovely image of, for example, the tree you're pointed at, and all the stars are going to kind of just be streaks across. If that makes a little more sense for a beginner. Because I know Dan likes to get technical.
Whatever you do, don't try to polar line in your living room.
And try and avoid polar aligning on a moving satellite. A couple of our people have accidentally polar aligned their telescope on a satellite, and also then, that satellite's really crisp, but everything else is just zoom. All right, were there any more questions out here? And it looks like our questions online are wrapped up. So I want to thank you all for joining us here. Our online chat, do hit those like and subscribe. It helps us greatly know that we're doing a good job. For all of you here, if you're ever not able to make it, do check out our website and our YouTube. We keep all our past presentations there in case you've missed one that you really want to go back to. And don't forget, ask questions, have fun, and until next time, clear skies and good seeing.
Oh,